Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, and thank you for joining us today on our third of 5 webinars in our series titled Navigating the Uncharted Waters. My name is Dee Coca, the Chief Evaluation Officer with Sterling International. This third session is titled Reinventing Your Business. I would like to start by introducing my mentor and friend, Ala El-Hawagi. Ala serves as an organizational systems strategist, consultant, executive coach, and organizational development professional. He is the chairman of the board of Sterling International, headquartered in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and the former CEO of Innovative Group, headquartered in Pompano Beach, Florida. Hi, Ala. Thank you for joining me again today.
My pleasure.
Our webinar today will be divided into 3 parts, just like we did with our last webinar. We'll start with having our discussion on the topic, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. And if time allows, I'll ask for you to give us a brief recap at the end.
Sure.
Okay, as we continue with our series of organizational immunity, why don't we start by you sharing with us what you mean by navigating the uncharted waters?
Now that we covered, thank you, Dee. Now that we covered webinar 1, which was focused on leading through uncertainties, as well as webinar 2, which is reinventing business using the canvas, in a way, what we have introduced is a very important fact. And this important fact is that our societies, communities, organizations, individuals must be ready to change. Okay, it's very clear by now. Change is hard. We all know that. Transformation is even harder. Okay, by understanding how we experience change, we can make sense and lead ourselves and our organization successfully through the changes happening nowadays in our work, as well as our personal lives. As you already know, the changes that we have been forced to cope with are considered what we call C, a significant emotional event. A significant emotional event can be defined as the event that will force you to change, where you have absolutely no control. And those comes in 2 packages, personal and professional, of course. So whether our viewers are being impacted by changes at the personal level, or they are impacted by things at work, I trust that in these survival tips that we're going to share today, they may find some comfort, hopefully, that will help them navigate much easier. And our discussion today will have key concepts and understandings, as I always do. Let me share with you some of these suggestions, if you will, to keep in mind as we're going through today's webinar. Number 1, the framework relies heavily in the organizational agility. Again, some people believe that organizational agility is only something designed for small organizations or for specific industries. I trust that that's a myth. Okay, organizational agility applies to every organization in every industry with any size. So the focus needs to be in a continuous series of nudges, as we talked before, to adjust very quickly to the dynamic change that we are facing today. The second point I want to make before we'll move on, that the implementation success would rely heavily in the command center team's contributions that we talked about last time. Who's in your command center? What are their knowledge, skills, and abilities? Are they covering the different layers of the organizations? Are they covering the different functions of the organizations? And are they contributors or comfortable enough to share their contributions? So continue to evaluate and adjust that command center as you see fit. The third one, which can be obvious now, that ad hoc responses will never work. It has never worked on peaceful times. It may push the business forward, but it been proven not to work over a span of time. Definitely, it doesn't work during times like this. So organization must build the necessary groundwork for today and tomorrow based on that. Another point is in monitoring the new dashboard that we have talked about in both webinar 1 and webinar 2. the organizations need to focus to a great extent on the implementation. And in that implementation, they need to be reflecting on what I call the 3F. They need to be fair in their expectations. They need to be friendly in their communication, but they must be firm in the implementation. So anything in the dashboard that requires implementation, we need to be really firm about it, particularly that has been designed by and gone through the command center. As leaders, our teams, and this is really an important fact, and I want all the leaders listening to us today to pay attention to this. Your teams will never move faster than you do. One more time, your teams will never move forward faster than you do. What that means is that you really need to be evaluating yourself every step of the way. Here's a tip to do that. Okay, you need to ask yourself this question every day if you can. In my current state, will I follow me? The way I appear, the way I react, the way I interact with others, will I follow me? Am I looking at someone that worth following? And be honest, be in perspective. And if the answer is no, it means that there are some things that you need to work on. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like in our last webinar, I really liked that you had the Reinventing Business Canvas because we received a lot of positive feedback on it because it was simple and customizable and it was addressing the business community's current needs. Can you share with us a similar tool or a concept that can be used to navigate what you're calling a significant emotional event?
Well, thank you, viewers, for those that reached out to us and really admired what we did with the Canvas last time. Indeed, this is what I'm going to do this time. I will share with you and our viewers a very simple framework. Is not new, but is customized to fit what we are talking about or trying to get to. It's very easily customizable. And I call it navigating the charter water framework. And as we agreed last time, if you remember, this is a base that every one of us can work from, and it's not a prescription. It's not something that you have to use verbatim, but again, it's customizable and it's available, and you can add to it, take away from it as you see fit. So let me go over this very quickly. You notice something that in the middle, by the way, like we've done last time, this is also going to be shared with everybody. I believe it's either going to be in the chat room as a link that everybody can download it. Mm-hmm. If not, I'll make sure that we have it available to everyone. As we talked before, you notice in the middle is the command center. I added something to it this time, which is the strategic apex. And the strategic apex is what organizations call the C-level, the chief level. And the reason I added this, because there may be a separate session at the beginning, especially during step 2, which is the planning, that the executives need to agree on before they get to the command center. Again, they're not going to agree on cast in stone strategies, but rather they need to discuss some possibly sensitive information about finance and about where the organization is, etc., but also about how do we see this period and what do we can do to get the maximum out of it, if you will. The other thing I want to note, which is on the right of the chart, this is a formula that can be used immediately now. It can be used for tomorrow and in months to come. And then the new normal. And the reason I'm calling it the new normal, because it depends on the industry, it depends on the size of the organization, it depends on the geographic location where you are operating. That normal may look different from one organization to another, from one society to another. So let's begin, and we're going to go clockwise, okay, on this. So begin on the top left corner, which is step number 1, and it's titled, each one of these steps, I gave it a title, and I also have like something at the end, like a theme or what you get out of it or why this step exists. By the way, also let me add before I begin the details that this is based on Henry Mintzberg 5 Ps of a strategy development. This is a concept that we didn't design, and in fact, Harvard Business Review commented on that as well. So it's kind of a combination. This is what we try to do in our webinars. There is so much in the market today. We're trying to condense it, to make it simple, to make it user-friendly, so people don't have to look multiple sites and go to one place where they can get easy-to-use tools that are ready for implementation. So the first one is where to go. And this speaks to our position. We discussed this when we discussed in webinar 2, leading through uncertainties. Actually, webinar 1. And I highlight 3 things here. Again, the purpose of the position is to help us make a smart decisions. So the 3 things that probably I feel that our priority in here is, who are we? Who are we in this new position? Okay, how do we want our customers to look at us? Okay, so who are we in the market? Okay, whether in reference to volume of business, our new image with our customers, internally with our employees. The second thing, who are our main competitors? And this is important information to help you always know where you stand in the market and what are some of the things that you need to do. The third question is, do we need the entire organization open? I alluded to this when I talked about the reinventing business. I'm not suggesting that by shutting down parts of the organization, you send people home. In the contrary, I am suggesting, however, that this is the time for manpower planning. This is the time to know where people are, what are they bringing as knowledge, skills, and abilities, where we can use them the most. And can we, if we don't need a part of the business to be open today, can we switch our resources to go to other areas that possibly is increasing, possibly are needed, possibly the customers are asking for that we didn't expect, etc. So from there, we get into the planning, okay? And I call this the navigator. And there's a reason for that I'm going to get to at the end of this step. This is what to do. The planning, obviously, is always about what to do. And this is where maybe the strategic apex need to take a deep breath and kind of meet a little bit for a few minutes first before they interact with the rest of the command center. Some of the things we need to be looking at in the planning section is what's the organization plan for bouncing back? Remember that most organizations today are talking about bouncing back. They're not talking about how to face what we are facing, because that's kind of a deja vu. Nonetheless, I gave this a 70-30%, and as you're going to see in question 3, but at least we need to focus on how we're going to bounce back, whether next week or the week after or next month, a plan to get us to the position that we hope to attain, our new position, how it's going to look like, and what's our plan to get us there. Now, what type of plan are you using? And when we talk about strategic planning, there are lots of myths about what strategic planning is and how does it look like. Maybe the current state does not require a strategic plan. It requires just an articulated plan. So this is really what you need to come up with. Could be Canvas, it could be other tools, where this is our plan for the next 3 months. And you need to articulate it where everyone in the organization, everyone in every department knows exactly what they need to do in order to deliver the expectations as stated and clearly defined in the new dashboard. What are our strategic differentiation based on what the market, the customers have told us today? Are we getting the understanding that we may have new strategic differentiation that we were not aware of, but the circumstances kind of help us to explore and look at? Engaging the workforce used to be, okay, do it if you really want high sustainable performance. Right now, we don't have a choice. There is no choice of of anything but engaging the entire workforce. This may lead, by the way, and this is really the great news. As we go through all these things, and when the dust is settled, and everybody kind of went back to whatever new position we have defined, or the new normal, as we call it, you may discover that you have taken some steps towards organizational transformation. And this is very exciting news, because I hope that businesses are not going to really wash this away and move on with business as usual without having the time to analyze this and say, this is becoming a leverage point. How can I build around that? How can I build around those transformation symptoms that we start seeing in the organization? Again, to do that, you really need to have folks with trained eye or no eye that can look at things and say, this is something new here. What do I need to do here to build around that or to build on that? The last one, does your plan ensure the balance, and that's kind of building on question one, between today's needs, which is organizations now are looking at that as 30% or less, versus tomorrow's direction, which really taken 70-75% of people's thinking. Once you've done that, let me go back. The reason I call it the navigator, because as you already know, at Sterling International, we designed this online navigator, if you will, based on the Sterling criteria that we discussed last time: leadership, strategy, knowledge management, customers, workforce, operations, which is the core and support processes and the business results. We've designed this navigator, and we have tested it, and we have used it with clients based on a lot of research for the last 30 years, where it gives the organization the pulse of where they stand today. It's in English, but we translate it into Arabic, and it's in the process of being translated into 2 more languages this year. So we're trying to help organizations by looking at the navigator and say, where do we stand? What are some of the areas that we need to work on once this, whatever we are in, is gone? The third stage is what we see. And what we see is, as I always say, I can stand in front of you and you can never tell anything about me except the logistical part, how I look and what I'm wearing. But in order for you to understand my behavior, to understand how I react and interact with others, you need to put me in a group, in a team, in an organization. So the culture is something we see, is something we feel, is something that gives us a lot of reading on how the folks in the organization are living. So this is important, because once we understand our culture DNA, it becomes a competitive advantage. This is one of the, I won't call it the easiest to build, but it's a challenging to build. Nonetheless, it becomes a huge competitive advantage in the market today. And I wish businesses will pay a very close attention to this, because they can use it tremendously, from our experience working with organizations, tremendously in becoming the employer of choice, in becoming the entrusted organization in the market. And we're going to be talking to a great extent about this in webinar 4. But for now is, how do we see ourselves in the world? Our own perspectives of how we see ourselves, our organization, our teams, our functions, and how we see outside the walls of our organization. What's our perspective of the world and the market that we are operating in? The second piece is, which is really an exciting index, it's called the collaboration index. And as you already know, we use this with some clients, and it's really a wonderful measure on what is the level of collaboration in your organization. You know, collaboration is one of those buzzwords that are used heavily these days in the organization. Most people may not be able to define it because they always talk about cooperation as collaboration, but the two words are worlds apart. But how does it look in your organization? And is there something that you can do to make this one of your leverage points that you can build around. Lastly, and we're going to elaborate on this greatly next time, is where are we prepared culturally to face today, tomorrow, and the new normal? And if we are not, what are we missing?
Yeah.
Is there a tool that we can measure culture? The answer is yes. Is there a tool that we can measure maturity? Absolutely. Where is our organization from these two? And what does healthy culture look like? What does a mature organization look like? Those are kind of, there are lots and lots of possible tools that can be used in that arena. But again, I want to leave this till next time because we're going to elaborate. That's the core of next time is really to talk about the culture. From there, we move to step number 4 to follow the flow of what we started, which is deploy. And deploy is really about what we discussed last time, which is reinventing business using the business canvas. And in there, I chose 3 questions that are really critical out of the canvas. Number 1 is, what's our monitoring dashboard look like? And please, leaders, if you haven't prepared or you are in the process of preparing your new dashboard, make it very quickly, make it delineated all the way to the front line, and find an easy to follow way to monitor the implementation of the dashboard. Your well-being depends on that. My second question that they pose on leaders under the reinventing business, what are our priorities and coordination abilities? To set priorities is a science and an art. And to coordinate those priorities requires fantastic logistic efforts. And unless we have a very clear way of setting priorities and a very clear way of coordinating efforts, the new dashboard will not mean much. Okay? And the monitoring of that will not mean much as well. The third one, which is really a be careful, which is, did we get overboard with our initiatives? People, when they are subjected to change, and some are drastic, like C's, significant emotional events like the one we're going through now, get carried away. Okay, they want to reinvent the world in 7 days. Okay, and so they do dozens and dozens and dozens of initiatives. No, stay cool, focus on the priorities, focus on the major indicators that are communicated to you via your command center as well as your customers, and respond to those. Okay, focus on the critical few, then the majority of the initiatives that have no place to deal with right now. This will ensure awareness. This will ensure awareness for everyone in the organization, and I mean in this case, everyone. Okay, the front line, because the bottom line is created by the front line. The front line must be clearly aware, must be clearly in tune with what's going on and all the directions coming from the command center. Finally, which is going to be the topic that we're going to talk about or discuss in webinar 5, is the pattern, okay, according to Henry Mintzberg. And here I call it the systemic approach, okay? The systemic approach is really one of the ways, in my humble opinion, that will ensure that we are on the way to immunity, okay? And that's going to be our final webinar of 5. And in there, we're going to be talking about mainly 3 things with a great level of details. Are we looking at the big picture? I mean, as we reinventing business and as we connecting to our customers and as we communicating with our internal stakeholders and as we playing our role in the society, are we looking at the big picture of our business, of our purpose, and who's involved in that? And how can we protect those who are involved in that? Did we measure our ability to be prepared at all levels in the organization? Organizations are finding out that they were not ready for this. Most organizations are actually. Nonetheless, the organizations that are bouncing back, okay, are doing tremendous. Look at General Motors and what they are doing here at home. Look at Johnson & Johnson and what they are doing here at home. Look at Walmart and what they are doing here at home. Okay, yeah, I recognize I'm naming some of the business icons here, big organizations, but the mom and pop shops on the side of the road, okay, every small business is really doing something today that they never thought they were able to do before, okay? But also other organizations found out that they were not prepared, fine, and they are not even in a position to reinvent themselves. Well, guess what? And it really breaks my heart to say that, but those organizations are the ones that are going to go under. Those are organizations that are not able to really focus on the change as it happens and what they need to do with that change. Generally speaking, they were able to navigate through minor changes, but now that we all subjected to this significant emotional event, I think it's kind of doing a lot more than exposure. And if we're talking about tomorrow and the new normal, the questions becomes what projects do we need for sustainability? And this is a strategic level thinking. Okay, you were able to navigate through uncertainty. You were able to bounce back. Okay. But what can we do as we are looking at those leverage points that we discovered during those time of change? And how can we, through our knowledge and understanding and experiences, create projects or create a dashboard that ensures that sustainability? And that this is really one of the things, as you already know, Dee, in our work with Sterling International, that is very, very exciting and refreshing to be working on. So this is the Navigating Uncharted Waters framework. Again, I hope it's shown now in the chat where everybody can download. If not, we'll make absolutely positively sure that everyone participated in this webinar will get a copy of it in Word and PDF, and because we want you to customize it, we want you to play with it, we want you to go and download the 5 Ps of Henry Mintzberg and see how that can give you a little bit of background to in order to anchor this down a little more.
Yeah, what I like about this and what seems to be the common thread throughout every stage here is for me, it always goes back to the communication and ensuring the open two-way communication, but there's so much of it here regarding how much that impacts the culture. And when people are going through times, even when they're just status quo, when they feel like they're the last to know or they're getting pieces of information, that is the torpedoes a culture. So I think it's really important through all aspects, that through every stage of this, it has to be where that communication plan has to be developed very well and make sure that it, like you said, it goes all the way to the front line and back up. So I really like that. Okay, let's see.
And I can't emphasize enough what you just shared, and communication is not only is very critical, but it's how we go about communicating. Okay, how are we open and transparent with our communication? How willing are we to connect with ideas that are not ours but can be intriguing? You know, because every time we are faced with an idea that we have never encountered before, it intrigues something in us. And it's a shame that we let that go away, because that intriguing process that happens is getting us to a new level that is very different than the level we started with when we started that conversation. So I cannot emphasize enough what you just shared, and thank you for saying that communication, and this is why organizations, most organizations, progressive organizations, of course, have communication officer. That's all what they do for a living. They are focusing on communicating internally heavily from top down and right, left, and also communicating externally with customers, with societies, and so forth. Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to get started with looking at the big picture and how all the elements connect together to ensure the success of the organization now and in the near future. It's important to reflect on those critical questions to develop the implementation plan.
Sure.
When it comes to change and transformation, can you recommend a specific tool that is simple and effective in carrying out the needed actions?
Okay. By the way, for those who are viewing us today, I will start recommending tools by name from this webinar. And I'm not promoting those tools. I'm just saying that those tools we have used. They gave us some fantastic results. We have used them with clients of all sizes, all the way from 20, 30 people organizations, all the way to literally 100,000 people organizations, to almost 500,000 people organizations. And we know they work. We know they work wonderful, and we know that they give us the results. They gave us the results we are looking for. I highly, highly recommend for those that want to look at a change platform, is to consider ProSci Atkar. Okay, ProSci Atkar is we as you already know, we are certified in ProSci Atkar, and we use their model and their material extremely heavily. And this is an absolute amazing tool that I will encourage everybody to put their hand on. For instance, what Atkar is a model to help you navigate the change successfully in both personal and professional life. Okay, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about individual and their family, or we're talking about a CEO and a 10,000 employee organization, or we're talking about the CEO of General Motors that has a zillion people working for them. It is so simple and easy to follow. And what I would recommend is begin by buying the book. Just go and buy the book. I think it's like $15, $20, something like that. Order the book, read the book. Okay. I trust that when you read the book, you're going to find in it some tools that you can implement immediately, both at the personal and professional. If you like what you read and you have a couple of dollars that you don't know what to do with them, and you have 3-4 days, then I will highly recommend that you go and get certified in this absolutely wonderful model. So that's what I would recommend for the change management. There are tons of change management models out there. I just felt that this works wonderful for us and our clients.
Can you tell us what the acronym ADKAR stands for? Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The A stands for awareness. And awareness needs a campaign in the company, in any organization. Why change? Why now? What happens if we don't change? So awareness get to everyone in the organization and help people make the transition and the jump to the new state very quickly. Desire, D for desire, which is really to support and participate in the proposed change. If people do not, if they are not aware, then obviously they're not going to participate nor support. But if they are aware, then there still be a challenge of why should I buy into it? So desire is one of those that requires articulation. This is where resistance in the organization starts appearing. This is when people start saying things like, everything is going well now. Why change? Okay, we are making money, aren't we? So you need to resist that kind of thinking. And in here, I should say something. Even Atkar, Jeff Hyatt is talking about that. Your job is not to eliminate resistance. Your job is to be able to successfully manage that resistance. So under desire, there are a lot of good material that will help you, one, build your resistance plan during change, and identify the resistance pockets in the organization, and then put a plan how to overcome that resistance. K stands for knowledge, and this is very critical, okay? Because why? Let me make this statement first. The skills and knowledge and abilities that got us to where we are today will never get us to where we need to be in the future. That's a generalized statement, has nothing to do with the sea that we're going through right now. Now, knowing that, and knowing that we have built the awareness and we have built a desire, now I'm aware of why I need to change and why now, and what happens if I don't. Now I'm on board. K comes very handy. Show me how to change. I need your help. I need the new skills that will help me navigate through the change and get the organization to the new state that it's been designed to. Abilities is nothing more than anchoring the knowledge that we had. So I need help, or I can say, I know now what to do, but ability is about, I can show you that I'm able to do that, okay? So ability is knowledge in action. And finally, reinforcement. And this is so important because most organizations, once they finish, okay, everybody is on board, we are doing what we need, we are getting to where we're going, and okay, everybody goes home, let's go back to normal. No, you have to consistently reinforcing the new state, reinforcing the new abilities, reinforcing the new knowledge that's coming, reinforcing the fact that we are not going back, we are going to go further forward. Reinforcement, designing a reinforcement that makes sense is very, very important in this stage.
Okay, and again, I want to talk about the communication, because with this change, I mentioned this before, I think in webinar 1, comes this tremendous fear that hits the workforce. And when they don't have enough communication to know what's happening, and the reassurance that we're going to give you the training required to keep us going in the right direction and you're coming with us, that's where you have a lot of problems with the morale and different things of that nature. And I think that's really important. And I like the ADKAR model because it is going to go through all of these different things and ensuring that you're getting your workforce on the right page, what's in it for them. And I think that's a really good tool.
Yes. I know you keep emphasizing communication, and it's very, very important. We can't talk enough about that. And this is why when we started this series of webinars, the first thing we talked about in leading through uncertainties was the communication tool. How do we communicate with others? What kind of message? How consistent is that message? Is everybody saying the same thing? I have seen, unfortunately, in some organizations that, and it's done with good intent. It's not done maliciously or anything, where there is a message coming from the CEO, and there's another message coming from another chief, and there is another message that's coming from the department head, and there is another message that comes from my manager. And employees say, okay, are these folks talking to each other? Okay. Yeah. Which one do I need to follow? Okay, can you make up your mind, please? And I think this is what we need to focus on. What we need to focus on is, and this is the importance of the command center, is what message are we getting out? How are we designing this message? Is it timely? Is it giving people the necessary information that they need? Is there a follow-up to ensure that whatever we communicate is actually being done? You know, one of the things that I really like about Patrick Lencioni is the 5 dysfunctions of a team, when he talks about communication and cascading and how those have to go hand in hand. He is suggesting that leaders need, when they get the message at the strategic level, they need to make sure that they communicate it within 24 hours to the layer below them, and the layer below them has to communicate it within 24 hours to the layer below them, and so forth. The importance in this communication, back to your point, is consistency and making sure that all these messages is the same or at minimum aligned. So one message is not telling me to go east and another message is telling me to go west. Okay, so your emphasis in communication is warranted, and it's very critical because of what we have seen in some organizations due to the lack of communication, and what that can do in normal times, not alone at times like the one we are going through right now.
Yeah, and the reinforcement component is so critical because that's going to ensure that all the efforts of everything you've done are going to be sustainable, keeping on with the themes and the the initiatives, all of that, because if it seems like decisions are made and they're feeling comfortable, they got to the place that they're happy as far as top management goes, they don't feel like they need to keep reiterating. Well, they do, because the people on the front line still don't know that the top management has already decided, no, we're okay now. They, at the front lines, they don't have a clue. They need to be told, and they need to be reinforced the new way of doing things.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Okay, so do you have anything else to say about this? Because I'd like to turn this over to some questions from the audience.
Well, I can talk about this for days, but let's go to questions.
Okay, let's see. Actually, we have a comment here from Dia. This is a suggestion, and he's suggesting that the wording can be changed for question 1 to optimize workforce rather than what to keep open in order to match what Dr. Allah is saying. Please advise.
Well, Dia is absolutely right. Remember, when I say, and I think I said that indirectly, but I like what Dia is suggesting, definitely, is the fact that, and I talked about that when we were talking about reinventing business canvas, I am 100% for optimization, not minimization.
Yeah.
I did that in all my previous jobs. I did that when I was on the front line. I did that when I was in management positions. I did that when I was in a chief strategic positions. I did that when I led organizations and continue to do. Minimization is the absolute last resort. And thank goodness I have never gotten to do that yet. I've never gotten to do minimization. Optimization is the way to go. So I totally agree with you, Dia, in your comment. And optimization here is referring to the fact that manpower planning, and that's what I referred to when I said, when you look at your manpower planning and you say, this part of the business is going to slow down for whatever reason, what can I do with the wonderful workforce that we have here where we can put them to maximize productivity in some other area? So whether we're talking about processes, we always talk about optimization, not minimization. We're talking about the size of the organization and the human beings in those organizations, as the system calls it, elements. We definitely looking for optimization, not minimization. So I totally agree, and thank you so much for your comment, Dia.
Okay, let's see. Amr has a question here. For the competitive advantage or differentiation, how can we ensure the change or the transformation that we desire impacted the culture DNA in a positive manner?
Let us, if we can table this to next time, because next time is dedicated for the culture, but let me give you a very quick view on this. Well, who is doing the performance in any organization? Human beings, right?
Yep.
Teams, individuals. Those teams and individuals are the ones that really shape or otherwise the culture of the organization, because the culture is about behaviors. It's about how I behave towards you, how you behave towards me, how I ask you questions and how you ask me questions. Okay. And I know you correct me most of the time, Dee, in the way I talk. I really appreciate that, because it makes me a better person. It makes me a more connecting person the right way. So it's really about etiquettes and protocols. It's about the values that are critical to the organization and how we go about implementing those values. You know, you look at any performance evaluation, if you will, and most organizations have something in it about values, but no one knows how to evaluate those values. You know, you look like 90% integrity. Okay, how do you feel? Never be like that. There got to be a way to measure that. And here's the clue till we talk about it next time. It's about key behavior indicators, KBI, not KPI. We're not talking about performance indicators. That's strategic track. The cultural track is, how do we want our folks to behave organizationally? How many of us have been subjected to different abuse from managers in our work? and we are not saying anything. And the organization is supporting those managers because they bring the goods. This is I don't want to go on that tangent now, but let's keep it positive. Okay, let's look at the progressive organization. What does a progressive organization look like? People know where they stand, position. They know what they need to do, plan, and they know how to interact with others via the values that in the organization. Take an organization like Nordstrom. Nordstrom, they spend 90% of training budget every single year training your employees on values. Period. Not sales, not management, values. Why? Because to them it's very, very critical to abide by those. And I can take you through a list of organizations that actually spending most of training budget in those. They want to engrave those values in the minds and in the hearts of people. And you have to do efforts like that. Not to mention, obviously, that you really need to make a coach out of every manager you have to coach their teams on what needs to be done.
Okay, here's a question from Ahmed. I think organizations today need to think of driving their businesses in an entrepreneurial way, which we call entrepreneurship with an I, which is characterized by flexibility, cross-function teams, mobility, exploring employees' potentials, and more customer-oriented focus. I believe organizations need to learn entrepreneurship and innovative techniques that one day resulted in building organizations like Google and Apple. What do you think, Dr. Allah? And there's a note here for you. By the way, Sunday became my favorite day as I see you live every week.
Thank you, Ahmed. I totally agree about the part, and I totally agree with that. But let me address the key point that you mentioned. Obviously, everything you said is spot on. But you talked about the innovation, and you mentioned Google and Apple and other companies, and I appreciate that. But let us break down innovation to something a little simpler. Let's call it for now ingenuity. Let us encourage our employees to always look at what they do and come up with a better way of doing it. And through those what I call the little nudges of change, as employees come up with all these little ideas and they build and they connect those dots, guess what? You're going to have a breakthrough at one point. Obviously, innovation has a technique, and those techniques need to be embedded in the culture of the organization at one point, at least through some folks that can lead that effort. Nonetheless, I am giving you a recipe for simplicity, okay? I always ask the folks I work with, how can we do this better? What do we need to do to improve this? So look at innovation as ingenuity. You may look at it as continuous improvement, and we're going to talk about that heavily in webinar 5. Nonetheless, a point is very well taken.
Okay, we have, I think maybe one or two questions here. Maybe I'm going to start with this one and see how much time we have left. Okay, Rizwana is asking, what is collaboration index, and what framework should be used to calculate that?
Well, I think I'm going to be talking about that next time. The collaboration index is more of a survey per se, and there is an index to it. There are scores that go with that. Okay, and it belongs to one of the organizations, so you kind of need to tap into it and get whatever they have. Nonetheless, it's a more of a call it survey, call it assessment per se, and you give it to a specific team, you give it to a specific department, and through that questions, you may find where you stand. The thing I like about it is even if you don't take the index, even if you don't do the survey or the assessment, just to toy with these questions, to play with these questions, okay? It will open people's minds to some possibilities. Make it a discussion in your weekly meetings. It can be a point. I think there are 15 questions, if I remember correctly. If you do a theme for each 2 or 3 of those questions and discuss them as a part of your weekly meeting, within a couple of months, you've finished the general themes of the collaboration, and then you start looking at some of the things that can measure that, if you so wish. Obviously, also collaboration can be measured under specific circumstances. For instance, do we have a collaborative mind during conflict? Okay, and how do we deal with decision making during conflict, for instance? And obviously, an assessment like Thomas Kilman can answer that. The first one, leadership challenge, Kozes and Posner can answer to that. And there are several others that are available for you to start at least a conversation about collaboration and building those themes in the organization.
Okay, I'll go with, and probably this is going to be our last question here. Ahmed has another question for you. Do you agree that organizations should be led as an army at this moment of crisis?
Yeah, one more time, I didn't get the question, I'm sorry.
Do you agree that organizations should be led as an army at this moment of crisis?
Well, I like the sound of the army in reference to discipline. We need to be disciplined. We need to have clear direction. We need to have focus. But we also need to have a very high level of agility and a very high level of communication and a very high level of interconnectivity. So if by army we mean the discipline, the deliverables, the marching together, then yes, those are fantastic qualities that we need to have during this time. Actually, during any time, but more so now. But I want to make sure that everybody hear me say that these need to be coupled with, at minimum, what I called in my first webinar, to become a chief empathy officer. You know, empathetic organizations are more productive than otherwise. Empathetic societies are more productive and more sustainable than otherwise. So how we factor in discipline and focus with agility and empathy is a beautiful balance.
Okay. Now that we've got about a little over 5 minutes left, can you quickly give us a summary of the key points from today's webinar?
Okay, well, thank you very much, viewers, for your amazing questions. You always surprise me with your wonderful questions. There are 5 points that I'd like to go over very quickly. One is start by designing and communicating the new dashboard. I cannot emphasize that enough. So please, if you haven't done that, you really need to do that. And it needs to be thorough, it needs to be clear, it needs to be empathetic, it needs to be the few critical, etc. The navigating a charter water framework is about position, where to go, is about the plan, what to do, and optimization. Okay, is very critical here. Perspective of what we see, the culture, what to set as a priority, which is deploy, and how to get ready, which is the pattern. My third point, use the change management vehicle, which I highly recommended, ProSci Atkar, or anything that you're already using if you are comfortable with it. More than that, if you are in search for one, please explore ProSci Atkar. My point number 4, as leaders, our team will not move faster than we do. So look yourself in the mirror every day and ask yourself that very, very simple question, will I follow me? And my last point is, which I always say, take great care of yourself. This is not easy stuff. This is tough stuff. Leadership is intense work in normal circumstances. During special circumstances, or as we go through significant emotional events, it is more so than otherwise. So it put a lot of stress on our mental, it put a lot of stress on our bodies, it put a lot of stress on our emotions. So you really have to look at yourself holistically and address all those core intelligences mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And the combination of all that will help you to become holistic on the way you look at yourself. And hopefully, in the process of doing that, you will be able to help others and coach others in your team. That's my summary for basically the key points of what we talked about today.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone who reached out to us through the Organizational Immunity Resort, and I'm encouraging all businesses to continue to reach out to us at my.immunity@sterlinginternational.com. On that note, thank you, Ala, and thank you to everyone joining us today. Since next week is the start of Ramadan, we're changing the day and time to Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Cairo local time for the 4th and 5th sessions in our 5-part webinar series. See you then. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.